Fa, Bri, Sen, Tor, Vat, Gat, Gorma, Nia. Games have changed. Vagafa, Vagabri, Vigasen, Vigator, Nevu. I see it every day, all around me. Gormat Gor, Biglo. What once was is now no longer. It all started many years ago with the creation of the first. Simple in design, it would change the world. Soon after, more would follow. For a time, they were good. However, it would not last, for before long there came a game to end it all. So it was that everyone began to forget, and time moved on. Days turned to weeks, weeks became months, and months became years. And after 2.5 years, they were silent. Then there came whispers of something else. Out of the east, from the land of the rising sun, came a shadow. So it was good, and thereafter more would follow. Some good, some bad, but all in the name of progress. As the sun began to set, it marks only the end of one era and the beginning of another. However, something new has arisen. The pasty gamer. Who is he, you ask? He is the one who hoards all of the games for himself and will only occasionally share.
It's mine! It's finally mine! So much paper! Oh, it's so beautiful! It's so beautiful! I have to show this to Kratos! Kratos, look! It's so beautiful! Daddy?
What knockers?
Oh, thank you, Doctor.
Huh?
Honey, breakfast is ready. I made your favorite.
Ooh, waffles! Mom, can you turn the light off?
Oh, sure, honey.
Thank you. By my waffles, something wicked is near. Waffles and waffles. Hey, wait. Hello?
Hulk!
Can I get past you? My breakfast is getting cold.
You shall not pass!
Hold on a second. Fred, give me my script.
Yes.
Master. It says right here that you're not supposed to be here till episode 2.
Oh, I'll be my driver.
Waffles? Hey, these aren't waffles. Mom?
What did you say to me?
You promised me waffles.
Then you shall have waffles. Now you have waffles.
Alas, poor pancakes, out of chewed way.
Oh, hello everyone. Yes, I am the Major Game Collector. What do you think of when you think of the Lord of the Rings? The books? The movies? But what about video games? As you can see here, there have been many games that have been released over the years based on the Lord of the Rings. I know what you're saying. That is a lot of games. But as you can see here, we will only be focusing on the ones based on the Fellowship of the Ring. We'll begin by looking at the Lord of the Rings Volume 1 for the PC. For this video though, we will actually take a look at the enhanced CD version. Though it is the same version, it has some minor improvements.
Long ago, in the early years of the Second Age, the great elven smiths forged rings of power, 9 for mortal men, 7 for the dwarf lords, 3 for the tall elf kings. But then the Dark Lord learned the craft of ring making and made the Master Ring, the one ring to rule them all.
Here we are in the Shire in front of Bag End with our companions Sam and Pippin right next to us. As we begin to explore the Shire, we come across Lobelia, and of course she wants the key to Bag End. Now that we got that finished, we can gain some new companions, such as this dog, this dwarf, a horse, and even this lady in a green dress. Eventually we do meet up with Merry. He's just waiting for us by this bridge. The one thing about the Shire is that it's a very big place and it is very easy to get lost in, since there are also multiple side quests that can be performed. After more wandering, we finally come to the exit to the Old Forest. Now the Old Forest is not as big as the Shire, but it can be more confusing. After much wandering through the Old Forest, we finally come to the exit, and right into the waiting arms, figuratively speaking of course, of Old Man Willow. The one thing you will notice though, based on the graphics, is that he looks just like every other tree. Why would he even ask us that? Who really would attack a tree? Pasty, what do you think? Yeah, see, that's why we never ask him for advice. Now that that's over with, we can move on to the Barrow Downs. Here we are in the Barrow Downs. All you'll notice is that everything is gray. That is actually fog. And as we begin to move around, our companions begin to disappear one by one. Suddenly, we find ourselves in this underground chamber to have our second Deus Ex moment, when we are saved once again by Tom Bombadil. Well, now that we're done with this, we can move on to Bree. Here we are in Bree. Though not much to look at, we're not going to be here very long, since all we need to do is head to the end of the Prancing Pony to meet up with Strider. Now that we've met Strider, our next objective is to move on to Rivendell. Here we are in Rivendell. Our only main objective here is to meet up with the rest of the Fellowship, so that we may continue on to Moria. But before we leave, we can stop and say hello to Bilbo. And of course, he would like to see the ring. Now that's out of the way, let's move on to Moria. Here we are in Moria. Good luck. Oh, wait a minute. I'm coming with you. One thing to note here is Gimli is actually invaluable, There are multiple floors going up and down, and no discernible way to know where you are at any given time. He actually drops hints that tell us where we are. After getting lost and wandering for what seems like forever, we come to this area where there's a throne, and then all of a sudden, the Balrog appears.
The Balrog? He's not supposed to appear until we leave the mine! Master Chief, what do we do? Worthless. Calm down. I know. I'll check the rules. Balrog. Ah, here it is! The Balrog can only be defeated with the Golden Wheel.
Good thing we have the Golden Wheel, because without it, who knows what could have happened. Now we can actually leave the mine. But of course, before we can, guess who should appear again but the Balrog. However, this time, the Golden Wheel won't stop him. Instead, Gandalf uses his wizard staff to sacrifice himself so that we may continue on. Sam and Frodo have now been kidnapped, but don't worry, we'll see them again in Part 2. As soon as the Fellowship leaves Moria, we are attacked. Now we are able to move on to Lothlorien. After much more walking, we finally reach the area outside of Lothlorien. Unfortunately, we are stopped by the elves who will not let us in, but since they recognize us as a friend, they allow us to enter. Here in Lothlorien, our only main objective is to go and speak to Galadriel and Celeborn. There, they tell us about what has happened to Sam and Frodo. Now that that's done, we can continue on to the final area. Galadriel comes to meet us at the river to show us off and give us a boat. A swan boat. Whatever works, I guess. Now that we're across the river, we still have a lot more walking to do. A ways up the road, we run into an old friend, Gollum. As soon as Gollum sees us, he tries to run away. Then since we are too smart for him, we capture him. A little ways up the road, Gollum suddenly tells us to get off the road. And a good thing too. A little ways further up, and we will be captured and killed. Gollum leads us through a forest to the back entrance in the final area of the game. Here we are in the final area of the game, a tower. Quickly we realize that Gollum is missing. We don't need to worry about him anymore. We only need to make our way to the top of the tower. Not to meet up with Rapunzel, of course, but to meet up with the Witch King who is waiting at the top. One thing to note about this area is that it's actually very short and very straightforward. Once we reach the top, we face off against the Witch King. And for a final boss, he's actually fairly easy. Once we defeat the Witch King, now all we do is sit back and watch the ending. So there we have Lord of the Rings Volume 1. As you can see, this game can be very confusing, but at the same time, quite rewarding. Another thing to note is that this game actually follows the book fairly closely, while the other games that we'll be looking at are more inspired by it. Now, without further ado, let's move on to our next game. Now we come to J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings Volume 1 for the Super Nintendo. We begin here in the Shire, however, we are all alone this time. We quickly come across Sam, who is just standing here and refuses to join us until we find some glasses. We come across Pippin, but he refuses to join us as well because of all the wolves around. Once we've taken care of the wolves, he joins us. Now to find the glasses, but where should we look? But in a cave, of course. You like caves, right? Because we're going to be exploring a lot of them. We come across the glasses, and finally Sam will join us. Now we can leave the Shire. After wandering through this forest, we finally come to Crick Hollow, but who should be waiting for us here but none other than Merry. There's nothing else that can be done in this area, so we can just move on to the next one. But first, it's back to the forest. Once we make our way through it, we come to the Barrow Downs. Remember how I told you we're seeing a lot more caves? Well, you actually haven't seen anything yet, because the Barrow Downs are cave central. Overall, it can actually be more confusing than Moria in the last game, Except, of course, this time there's no Balrogs or golden wheels. Now, besides making our way through all these caves, there's also things to find, such as keys, some gold. There's even this amulet. You might be wondering what these amulets are for, but we'll get to that later. Finally, we come to the exit of the Barrow Downs, a big wooden door, which is locked. Good thing we have a key. Now that we got it open, let's move on. Beyond this is Bree. And of course, you know who is waiting for us here, none other than Strider. However, he refuses to join us. He requires that we bring him some king's foil first, otherwise known as Athelas. After bringing him some, he joins the party and we can head for Rivendell, right? Wrong. First, we must go through an area known as the Troll Shaws, which in actuality is more like a giant hedge maze. Overall, it's fairly easy to make your way through. There's just one catch. There are also more amulets to find. However, they are not hidden in the maze anywhere. No, but in another cave. But where is the cave? Searching high and low, there is no cave entrance. So where is it? Inside an unassuming rock, of course. Now who would think to look there? Inside the cave is, of course, a huge maze. Also, besides the ambulance, there are even these scrolls. Once we've found all of this, we can finally leave and go to Rivendell. Exploring the Shaws, we come across this bow. Who could this belong to? But none other than Legolas. Once we give him his bow, he joins us on our way to Rivendell. Once in Rivendell, Gandalf is waiting here along with Elrond. Speaking to Elrond, he tells us that our journey is not yet over. But we knew that already. Speaking to Gandalf, we find that we need those amulets, or gems as he calls them, to open Moria. Instead of joining us, though, he will meet us there. So at this point, we can move on to Moria. Making our way to Moria, we come across another friend, Gimli, who asks to join us. Now, it was at this point that I ran into a glitch. When I came to Moria, Gandalf was nowhere to be found, and the entrance to Moria was open. Though that does sound good, the game refused to load using the password provided to continue the game. Since this is the final level anyway, let's just move on to the next game. Now let's look at Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring for the Game Boy Advance. Once again, we start here in Bag End. Sam has already joined our party. Overall, there's not much to see here. Frodo comes across some silver spoons to give as a gift. We find Pippin visiting with the neighbors. Before we leave the Shire, we should stop in to see Lobelia. Giving her the spoons, she gives us a stick. Not really a fair trade. Now to head to the forest. Just before we leave the Shire, though, there's a black rider ahead. Making it through the forest, we finally reach Crickhollow and meet up with Merry, who joins our party as well. Because of the Black Riders, Merry suggests going through the Old Forest. The one feature of the Old Forest is that it is very easy to get lost in. Eventually, we come across Old Man Willow, who puts our friends to sleep, which means we need to find Tom Bombadil. At his home, his wife is blocking the door where she tells us he's out in the forest. We find him waiting here in this clearing. Telling him about Old Man Willow, he agrees to help. But first, he lost his feather and will not help unless we retrieve it. Giving him the feather, he tells us how to stop Old Man Willow. Going back and playing the Willow-Withies, he releases our friends and we can now leave the forest. Here we are once again in the Barrow Downs. Fortunately though, they're a lot more straightforward this time and there's only a few caves. There's really not much to see, and one odd thing though are the treasure chests that cannot be opened. Beyond this is the town of Bree. Here in Bree, once again there is not much to see. We only need to head for the inn. Once inside, we are greeted by the innkeeper. Afterwards, speaking to Aragon, even though he should be called Strider here, he says he'll meet us in his room later. But there is no later, so we can leave now. Once outside of Bree, we make our way to Weathertop. At the top in the ruins, we are promptly attacked by the Nazgul. They attack Frodo, but somehow he does not die or become incapacitated. Instead, when we regain control, we only need to find some Athelas. After that's done, and more wandering through caves, like we haven't seen enough of those, all 9 Black Riders surround us. Frodo has to make his way across the river alone. After the short scene, we are in Rivendell. We are greeted by Gandalf. He suggests we talk to the council. Talking to the council, if you know the story, you already know this part. At this point, the game can glitch, preventing us from moving forward in the game. For one, speaking to Bilbo, he's supposed to give us his mithril armor and Sting. Usually though, all that appears is Sting. A funny one is when attempting to leave Rivendell, you will see that Gimli is invisible. We are still able to talk to him, but he will not leave without his axe. A group of elves have the axe. Speaking to the elves, they agreed to give it back. However, they may or may not drop it, making continuing the game almost near impossible. As you can see, this game is just so glitchy, and all that's left is Moria anyway. Let's just move on to our next game.
What's the matter? Afraid?
Who's that?
You are afraid to go to Moria, aren't you? Because you know what awaits there. You know that there's a creature that will destroy you and the world.
Really? Let me guess. It's your mother-in-law, right?
No! No! A dragon.
You do realize that's a dragon from Skyrim, right? And that you're not supposed to be here until episode 2.
Isn't this episode 2?
This is still episode 1, you know.
No? I need to get myself a new agent.